This is Nitha Ramachandra from the NR Hour Sports Show. This is episode 1029. We have a special guest on today. But first, fans, please tune in. We are live on iHeartRadio, Spotify, on all the podcast platforms where you can listen in and tune in live right now. We are live with former NFL cornerback Ellis Hobbs. He played for the Philadelphia Eagles and the New England Patriots, and now he's doing big things off the field. He's a day trader. He's a mentor. He helps out other people in the community, and he has a business called Ascend Capital, which we'll get into also. Obviously, his career, how he got into football, everything else. But fans, like I said, tune in, and obviously, you guys know about the Spreaker app where you can ask questions today to Ellis. So fan interactions is always good on the show. And Ellis, I'm really excited for this interview, and thank you for joining us today. How are you and your family doing today?
Man, first off, I appreciate the introduction. As an entrepreneur, man, and someone that's self-motivated, you don't get a lot of your heads are always in the weeds, and so you're grinding and digging. But when you start to chat off some of that stuff, it's kind of funny because you don't think about the history and the receipts that you put in, man. But I'm doing good. No complaints, man. No complaints.
Yeah, no problem. So speaking of, before we get into your football career, tell our fans what you been doing. Obviously, I mentioned what you're doing now. Tell our fans, how did you get into being an entrepreneur, and obviously a big business now in Ascend Capital, and you're a day trader and a mentor too, all at the same time. So how do you deal with all that after your football career?
Yeah, man, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. I would say it's for the ones who are driven to be better than what the world wants to make you and become of you, right? And a lot of that derives from my sports background of not necessarily being the biggest, the tallest, having those metrics on paper, right? But continually working my butt off every day, every chance I got, and knowing that if I put in the work and just give me one opportunity, I'll be able to show you what I can do. And so that has been able to transition into the world that I'm in now. And it didn't start off this way, of course, and there's still a grind on a day-to-day basis for anybody out there that knows what that type of life is about. But a lot of it came from just wanting to continually be successful in other worlds. I get tired and sick and tired of people figuring that athletes are just good for holding a ball in their hand or just running up and down a field, when we all know there's a shelf life on that, right?
Yeah.
So think about the catch-22, to where everybody cheers on an athlete, but then as soon as your career is over with, they're telling you, oh, you should have had a plan B, right? Or you should have had something waiting in the fold. Well, that's the point. Like, you have to continually move forward. And so with that shelf life, I always wanted to make sure that I had something beyond sports. And so basically willing myself, applying the skills, those disappointments, those losses, those dark times, those dark ages, creating companies, failing at them, losing money, nearly being broke at one point, but continually pushing forward to now we're into a flow. And was introduced to day trading about 6 years ago, upon selling or having a successful business and being able to sell that for 3x multiple in pre-base society, a few other businesses as well. But I took my lumps like everybody else, man, just continually pressing forward.
Wow, yeah. Well, that's amazing. And obviously, what do you say is kind of like playing the game of football? Obviously, when you lose out on a play or something, or lose a game, you just have to keep going and continue to work hard and gain the thing back. So would you compare this when you played football throughout your career?
Absolutely. It's a great correlation. And that's why I always, even if you're not a great athlete, if you're not the best, I always encourage parents, I encourage mentors, I encourage individuals to somehow put yourself into sports and get into that world of competitiveness, because there is no other world that I know of that's as competitive as sports instantaneously, to where you could be down by 10 with, I don't know, a minute left. Are you going to continually fight? Or are you going to continually go on? You compare that to, all right, I just lost my job. We have bills due in the next 15, 30 days. What am I going to do? Am I going to sit here and sulk? I'm going to cry about it, or I'm going to get out there and fight? And so any employees that I've had, anybody from a mentorship that I've had underneath my helm, I try to put them in competitive situations, and I want to see how they naturally respond to it, right? Because there's a fight or flight mode. And so when you talk about everything that I've been able to do on a day-to-day basis, a lot of that has derived from all of my interaction within sports. And that's just not professional sports. I've been playing sports since the age of 4 or 5 years old. And so my career expands across 3 decades. And so when you talk about all of the life lessons, all of the journey, all of the progress, none of that can be taken for granted. And so to give back those days, you don't have the Ellis Hobbs that's here now and able to do what he's able to do. And again, I take my losses and my failures just like my wins, but the difference between the success and the failure is me being able to consistently come back and say, I will learn from the situation and I will apply the information moving forward.
No. Yeah. So tell our fans, how did Ellis Hobbs get into football?
Man, so I'm from Dallas, Texas. Anybody that knows Texas is
Yeah.
it's a very, very, very heavy sports centric world. Back then, for anybody that wasn't around at those times, that are a little bit younger, wasn't familiar, I compare it to that movie Friday Night Lights. That was exactly what it was about. And so, growing up in the area of DeSoto, Texas, a little suburb community, about 15, 30 minutes outside of the Metroplex, Dallas Fort Worth area of the city.
Yeah.
And so it was just a world of sports and competitiveness, right? It was a good mixture at the time of white and black, Hispanic, and just good people in general, right? Obviously, there's racism, there's tension everywhere, but there was a great community nonetheless. And I had a great, great amount of support from coaches, from parents, individuals, families, friends, things of that nature, to where you could find yourself successful more than not. Now, that being said, still I had those heavy burdens on me as far as being a certain way, looking a certain way. So constantly having to prove myself. But my parents, middle-class workers, work very, very hard, still here today, still work very hard. My mom refuses to give up her work just because it keeps her busy and she wants to be successful. My father, he has a military background, 30 plus years, E9 Sergeant Major, one of the highest enlisted ranks out there in the military on the Army side. And so when you talk about 2 tours in Vietnam, a mother who has a nonstop work ethic, but it was written in the stars, right? To where I was going to be able to do something productive with my life. I still had a choice to go the other way, but I wanted to do something productive just based off of the role models that I had. And so sports was an outlet for me. My parents, they don't have any sort of professional background in sports, but they were always active. And we would constantly find ourselves out there with my brother and my 2 sisters playing on Sundays, competitive basketball against one another. My brother, he's the same age. I'm 39, he's 38. We're about 10 months apart. My sisters are about 4 or 5 years younger than us. And so we would just be one big family. We can create a one-on-one or team-on-team version of anything out there by ourselves. And so growing up, as I continually found myself in sports and being good at it, whether it was baseball, football, basketball, track, I just wanted to do everything. And I always tell this to anyone that I run into, even at a young age. If I'm going to do something, I'm gonna want to do it well because my name is on it. And so as I continually created those great habits, that's where a lot of my opportunities came from. And so I didn't need 10, 15 opportunities. I needed that one because you already had a negative connotation about me being at the time, smaller than everybody else. But then when you saw me on the field or the arena or the court, I always presented myself as jumping off the screen, man. This guy is different. He wants to go out there and get it. And regardless if I got knocked down, I got back up. I just continually competed.
Well, yeah. First, I want to say thank you to your dad for his service. That's really important, obviously, and for him to serve the country. And thank you for him, and obviously your mom too, working hard. And an amazing story you just mentioned. And we are live with former NFL cornerback Ellis Hobbs. We have a fan question in for you. One of our fans want to know who was the toughest receiver you had to cover throughout your career.
Man, without a question, without a doubt, Marvin Harrison.
Wow.
I think he still has one of the top 10. Well, it's been some time now, but at the time when I retired and around that time, I want to say on Fox Sports, he had like one of the top 10 catches of all time or something like that on me. And it was basically he one-handed the ball. Peyton put it in a great spot to where I couldn't get to it. He could only get to it, tapped it back to himself. But the reason why I consider him one of the greatest that I've ever gone against. Now, mind you, I wasn't able to go against those Jerry Rices of those that were at his prime, right? I saw him when he was with the Raiders, but totally different Jerry Rice. But going against him, he runs every route the exact same. And what I mean by that is the same speed at the same velocity and intensity, right? So his slant looks no different than a post. His post looks no different than a stop route or an out route. And so as a DB, it's very hard to find indicators where taller people who are normally receivers are easier to cover because their body naturally has to break down to run those routes. And so obviously you run into a freak of nature like a Randy Moss, who by far day in and day out, who I went against, greatest of all time, in my opinion,
Yeah.
but going against within a game format, Marvin Harrison.
Wow. Yeah, so speaking of, obviously you said you grew up in Texas, and so I'm a huge Dallas Cowboy fan. So I gotta say, were you a big Cowboy fan also growing up? And would you say, did you look up to Deion Sanders?
Man, so he was my hero, man. I didn't know how impactful he would be at that time, but now I follow him just because of the legacy he's creating at the HBCUs.
Yeah.
I wish that was something of availability as far as opportunity back in my day, where you have to have that strength and that name behind, I believe, like a power like a HBCU in order to move it forward, which he's doing. But he just showed me that you could play the game a certain way and have personality within it, right? And so when you talk about a Dallas Cowboy fan, I always say this: the New England Patriots and the Philadelphia Eagles, that was my W2.
Yeah.
That was it. Like I said, I wasn't a fan of the Patriots before that. I didn't even know where they were.
Hmm.
The funny story about the New England area is that those people up there, if you go up there, they're very, very close community. Great environment if you're definitely one of them, and if you're familiar to the area, but they're very closed off when it comes to the outsiders, right? And so having that structure the way that they do, they have their own little world. But when they get outside of that world, they realize that don't too many people care about the New England Patriots. Don't too many people care about Boston sports, the Northeast in general, right? Just because it's so far removed. And so when they flew me in the first time, they told me I was flying into Rhode Island. And I was like, well, why the hell am I flying into Rhode Island to go play for, the New England Patriots in Boston? They're nowhere near Boston. They're about an hour away from Boston, right? But Dallas was my team growing up. Unfortunately, as a fan right now, it still is. I root for them quietly. I want to see them be successful, but they just can't get out of their own way,
Yeah.
man. But growing up in Dallas, man, in the '90s, and seeing the big three, Troy,
Yes.
Emmett, and the playmaker, Mr. Irvin, and going to those football camps, those guys were like, yeah, man, they were my heroes.
Wow. Yeah, so tell our fans, how did you become a defensive back, cornerback? Did you get to play any other positions before they switched you to defense? How did all that process work out for you?
Yeah, so all throughout Pop Warner, I never played on defense exclusively or offense exclusively, right? I did everything. And so I actually was on special teams back then. I would kick the ball off just because I could kick it the hardest, and I go down and make the tackle. Again, it was just about effort with me, man. My biggest three things are your ability to listen, your having a great attitude, and then also giving maximum effort, no talent required. And so when you talk about me as a football player, I just wanted to play, and I just wanted to go hit somebody, run the ball, everything else. But predominantly, I was known for being a running back. And
Yeah.
throughout high school,
Oh, wow.
that was my career. And so myself, a guy by the name of Tyson Thompson, and then RIP to Cedric Benson,
Yeah.
those were kind of the big three back then with me. So I was in the top three category of that running back category. And so I had a decent shot at getting somewhere of a bigger school, but it was just so much talent. And back then there was no social media. So people just heard of me, but they didn't actually get to see me on a night in, night out basis. A guy by the name of Byron Hanspard, another hero of mine, came out of DeSoto as a running back, went to Texas Tech, played for the Falcons. And he just showed that, there was an opportunity to get out of that world. And so when I was recruited by the Notre Dames, by the Texas A&Ms, I was always looked at as a defensive back. And that was something that I just didn't want to entertain because I didn't know too much about it. And again, in high school, I was the running back. I was third leading rusher in the state, I believe, at the time, or somewhere up there in the top categories. And so when I got to Iowa State, I was provided an opportunity to play running back with Coach Dan McCarney, and that was that opportunity I was looking for. And when I got there, not knowing to me, which understanding the world of the business, I was coming out and I was noted as the top running back, but a guy by the name of Ennis Haywood, who was coming off a great stellar junior year, all Big 12 honors, first team all Big 12 as a running back at Iowa State. And that's one of the reasons I went up there, because someone looked like me. And because they didn't want to create that friction, they said, hey, we want to get you on the field, but at the same time, man, is it okay if you go to a different position? And I was like, okay, man, cool. So I'm thinking, slot, scat back, something like that, whatever. They were like defensive back. And I was like, hey, just FYI, guys, I never played defensive back. Like I played linebacker in Little League, but high school. So I never ran backwards. And so I was like, listen, but if this is my opportunity, so long as I get to return kickoff returns and at least touch the ball, I'm willing to do it. And again, this is a lesson for you younger guys who are looking to get out there. So many of you guys get locked into one position, but all I wanted was opportunity. Just give me the opportunity to play and perform. And then from there, it's up to me, right? And so my first game, I ended up getting an interception against Northern Iowa. I ended up shining throughout camp. I ended up shining through practices. Second on the depth chart, got my opportunity in that first game. Boom, get that first interception. But from then on, I accelerated from there and got into my starting position by my sophomore year. And then the rest is history, right? Taking me to the NFL. If I wasn't willing enough to take that opportunity at the time when it was presented to me by Coach Dan McCarney, who I love dearly for the opportunity, along with Tony Alford for his opportunity as well, recruiting me, there is no Ellis Hobbs now. And so you never know, man. Just continually read the story, but that's the journey along the journey.
Well, yeah, so we are talking to former NFL cornerback Ellis Hobbs. Now he's an entrepreneur. We have another fan question that just popped in. Someone wants they want to take you back to the high school days. So they want to know, for you, what was it like playing underneath especially on Friday night, the Friday night lights, like you just mentioned earlier?
Yeah, man, it was beautiful. Like I said, Friday Night Lights. That's exactly what it was, man. Where last person in the house turn off the light. Everybody's at that stadium, and so being a close knit community, football was the only thing, right? And so whatever you think of football now, it was that back then. Again, it just social media didn't exist, and so that's I think helped me out tremendously. Getting into the bigger stages of Iowa State, into the Big 12. That's why I was very comfortable being on TV, very comfortable being in the 12th man field of a Texas A&M, playing a Florida State because of the level of competition, but then also just the crowd, where a lot of people get starstruck with that. But when you have, 4,000, 5,000 people attending your games in high school,
Yeah.
it's not a big deal, right? And so that pressure, whether it's positive or negative, it was always there. And I embraced that because of the work that was put in. So when I was out there and the lights got cut on, all that was just show and tell season for me. And it's just an opportunity to present myself to the world to let them know, like, hey, there's a formidable opponent here, and he's looking to make waves and moving forward.
Oh, yeah. I found an interesting story about you. You fell seven credits short, and then when you entered the NFL. But after that, you went back to finish your degree. So take us to that process. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So, fun fact: one of my talents and just kind of hobbies now is just drawing
Yeah.
in general. And I wanted to work for Disney at the time. And so when I was in college, that was kind of the transition or the paradigm shift from pencil to paper to more screen technology, right? And at the time, I think Shrek was the movie that was coming out. Toy Story kind of had its wave or whatever it was, but my scholarship didn't pay for my graphic design, visual communication arts degree. And so a lot of what I had to do, I had to delay. So imagine me as a college student, you know, paying for matte pencils or colored pencils that are $25 a pop, or some of my drawing books that were sometimes, $30, $35. I just couldn't afford it.
Wow.
And so even me, I had to take a bus to get to the outer side of campus just to walk to the graphic design building. And so it's not a pity story. It's just the reality of the situation, right? And so when I left, it was an opportunity to feed my family. It was an opportunity to continually move forward my career of instantaneous money. And so a lot of people, don't get me wrong, I believe in education, not necessarily academics, but when someone is offering you a job for six figures plus, you take that job. And so I put it on the back burner, yes. But again, just a credit to my personality, a credit to who I am. I promised my mother that I would walk across that stage and I would graduate. Then I made a promise to myself. Anything that I start, I always want to finish. And so as hard as it was going into my second year into professional sports, I did sit down in those classes Saturday morning, sometimes a little hungover from partying or enjoying myself. But nevertheless, I continually pushed forward and I got those credits, man. And again, will I ever use that degree? I've used it once or twice in different spaces and arenas, and of course with business that's educated me as well. But what I've hung my hat on is just starting something and finishing something, and that's what I always encourage people to do.
Oh, yeah. So tell our fans about Uh, how important is it for an athlete to have that one coach like Coach Carney you mentioned to believe in you from day one, and the team to believe in you from day one? So, what was that like having like a team like Iowa State behind your back and Coach Carney before you went into the NFL?
Yeah, man. Coach Dan McCartney, just giving him his roses real quick, man. And I hope he has an opportunity to hear this. I've said it to him personally. They actually just honored him with, I believe a statue that's going to be erected in his honor or naming of a building at Iowa State. But he came into a situation with nothing at Iowa State, right? And if you think about Iowa State back then, do your history, man. It was the whooping child of the Big 12. And so the opportunity that you're talking about is exactly what he gave me. I don't know if he necessarily liked me. I don't know necessarily cared for me at the time, but he saw that I could add value to their program. And at that time, getting color into the room where it was very predominantly white, but then also getting a different demographic of athlete, meaning from Texas, from the South, from the West Coast with Seneca Wallace and myself, Reggie Hayward, Ennis Haywood had already led the way in doing their thing, right? And so when you talk about opportunity from a coach, and this is what I thoroughly enjoy now. It's actually one of my whys of what I do. I don't have to like you. I'm here to mentor you. I'm here to provide an opportunity. And so outside of the feelings and the emotions, because I think we get tied up into that too much when it comes to these types of worlds, especially now that we know that college sports is a business. That's all I wanted was just the opportunity. And from there, a passion and a mutual respect happened. And then I found love for one another because just as hard as he worked off the field for us to secure funding, to secure sponsorships, I busted my tail and I took with great respect that this man brought me up here. And even though everything they get paid for from an academic standpoint, I'm being provided food. I call it 3 hots and a cot. I'm provided dorm, room, board, all these other things that these other people have to pay for. So far be it from me to one, let him down, even worse, let my family down, but then ultimately let myself down
Yeah.
and take this opportunity and not take this opportunity to continually further myself.
Yeah, so we have another fan question for you. So someone wants to know, what would you say your most memorable game was in Iowa State and the NFL?
I would say of Iowa State collegiately, obviously, I think it kind of stands out, and it sounds cliche, but it was the Independence Bowl. That was my last game. It was a culmination of everything, and so all of the hard work, all of the dedication, that's on the forefront, right? But what you don't know about that season was it started off terrible for me. In the off season, a coach actually sat me down, Chris Ash, another great mentor of mine, another great coach and mentor of mine at the time. Coach Ash, he went on well beyond any expectations that I had of him and done an amazing job. I think he now the defensive coordinator with Texas
Yeah.
or still is or something like that. But he sat me down and was very, very truthful with me. And I think too many times we hype up these athletes, but we don't give them the reality of the situation. And so I had a lot of big expectations with myself. I had a great spring ball, but my summer camp in 2 days was horrendous.
Mm.
And those first 3 games, I was making plays, but I wasn't doing enough to lead our team to where we wanted to go coming off of a 2-10 season. And so when he gave me that dose of reality, it hurt. It hurt a lot because I knew it deep down, but I needed someone else to put that mirror in my face. And so I sat in the stadium, empty stadium by myself, Jack Trice, and just
Mm.
cried. And I said, man, if it's gonna be, it's gonna be up to me. And I got to take everything that I've learned and everything that I've done and harness it and then just go have fun. And so when you talk about the slow build in Oklahoma State, that game was kind of the turnaround game for me my senior year or that year that I was playing in. And then going from there into that last game against Ohio of Miami and to get that interception to close out the game, it was just such a gratifying moment because of the journey and the process. The victory is great, don't get me wrong, but the process is so undervalued because that process gave me the confidence to go do what I did and then take that and go beyond. And so a lot of people don't want to choose pain. They don't want to go through the pain, right? But there's 2 types of pain. There's the pain of regret, not doing it, and then there's the pain of going through it. And one of those has a reward on the other side. And if you're willing to put yourself through that pain and go through it, I promise you that reward that you get from it And that equity that you get from it moving forward will put you in a great position. And so that allowed me to get to the NFL for those other great moments. And so I can't really pinpoint a great moment on the NFL side because there were so many, but then also it was a business. It was a business by that time. A lot of what I tell people with the NFL, my intangible moments, the bus rides, the jokes. We had a thing called the fun bus. We had a thing called the circle group where our stretch lines, Bill would constantly get on us about not stretching and, joking around too much. And so those intangible things that I did with, Roosevelt Cove and Adelius Thomas, Randy Moss, that team collectively, Dante Stallworth on the defensive side, Eugene Wilson, Asante Samuel, a lot of those things, man, we just enjoyed ourselves back there and had a really good time.
Yeah, so before we get to your draft experience, I want to ask you about special teams. Last week we had Coach Mike Westhoff on our show last week, obviously special teams coach in the NFL. So for you, how important is it for special teams, because they can change the game at any moment?
Yeah, special teams again, man. Mental note to a lot of these young players, man, make yourself available. I cannot tell you how many times the starters that you see in this game right now and throughout the history of the NFL, they started somewhere on special teams, because the reality is somebody has that job prior to you getting there. And even as a first round pick, especially now, nothing's guaranteed, right? And so again, that derived from me making myself available within the collegiate ranks. And then even before that, I just want to play and just be an all-around athlete. I think when you pigeonhole yourself into one position, you literally X yourself out from any other opportunities out there, right? And so by making yourself available and versatile, people can pull and plug you to where when there is an opportunity for that starting role, because you've done so much else and created so much value for yourself, you're going to get that opportunity. But special teams for me was an amazing thing, man. When you talk about where it started at, I truly believe because of the versatility that I had, it gave me the opportunity in the NFL, because I was looked at as a third down defensive back, as a slot guy, but an all around special teams player. And so coming in at special teams and being able to do that literally gave me my opportunity to go out there and earn my starting position and with the New England Patriots and then moving forward.
Well, yeah. So tell our friends about your draft experience. Obviously, you got drafted in 05, round 3, pick 84 by a historic franchise in the New England Patriots. What was that like? And the relief after, once you got drafted, you made your goal, which was NFL. And what was the call like from Bill Belichick and the owner of Robert Kraft?
Awkward and depressing, because again of the experience through it. So anybody that's been through the NFL draft, that is, or any draft in general, man, there's two sides of it, right? There's the excitement of wanting to get picked. There's the excitement of wanting to be higher up, but then also the fear of like, what if I don't get picked, right? How does that affect me? And obviously Monday quarterback here, hindsight, it's all irrelevant once you step onto the field, because you still have to prove yourself, right? But when I was going through that era, and you probably remember this, the draft was Saturday and Sunday. It wasn't a prime time event thing. It was something looked at as a weekend thing. And so that third round was on the first day. So first day for me was just exciting. And I had some sort of idea. I didn't have that Mel Kiper push that everybody's looking for. And again, it didn't bother me because I had put up the stats all Big 12. I was tops, within the country. My stats, ranked out above everybody else. But again, just that notoriety, that marketing wasn't there for me. And so coming out in the era of DBs, I knew I had a good shot around, second round, third round, fourth round, worst case scenario, things like that. But if it fell apart, hey, we just continually move forward and we go earn it again, right? But I'm sitting with my parents, I'm sitting at home, and the New York Jets call me in the second round. And the GM calls me and says, "Hey, Ellis, are you ready to become a New York Jet?" I said, "Absolutely, man. I'm all geeked up. I'm excited. I just got me a new Nokia phone." And he's like, "Cool." So I hang up. I'm thinking my name's about to come across the screen. They pick somebody else, a guy from Clemson. He was actually a great special team and return guy as well. Him and I battled for quite some bit back there at special teams. And I'm like, okay, this is crazy. I'm assuming this is the general manager calling me, but all right, cool. So I get a call back from the general manager, same guy, within a matter of 5 minutes. He's like, "Hey, we didn't pick you." And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty obvious. He says, but we have another pick in the second round. Don't worry. So I stay on the phone this time, and it goes silent. And the next pick for the New York Jets is a kicker. And I'm like, what in the world? So I believe it was a guy by the name of Nugent or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And so he was from Ohio State. So I'm like, man, what in the world is going on?
Wow.
And so he gets back on again and says, hey, man, we, unfortunately, they went a different direction. So now I have no faith in the New York Jets.
No.
And the fact that he's the general manager and supposed to be head steaming this, it's like, okay, we have power, my friend. So I hang up the phone, man, dejected. And now I'm just scoring, right? I'm just scoring. And so we get through the second round, and then early in the third round, the Patriots, they don't have a second pick. They don't have a second round pick. I get a call from a 508 number. And anybody familiar with that area, 508 is the Foxborough area. And so this real bland, boring voice gets on the phone. And it wasn't Belichick, but it was his right-hand man, a guy by the name of Bears. I believe he's still up there right now. Great guy. And he says, hey, Ellis, we want to welcome you to the New England Patriots. We're looking forward to you. We're about to pick you. I'm about to put Bill on the phone. So I'm like, at this point, man, I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. Bill Belichick, even if he gets on the phone, I don't care because, obviously the process means nothing. You say something, but you can renege on that at any point. So he gets on there, man, boring voice, boring voice, welcome to the team, blah, blah, blah. I'm still not believing it. Wow. And then he puts Bears back on the phone and Kraft as well, and then Bears. And so I started to take a little bit more serious because they're taking their time.
Yes.
And then boom, my name comes across the screen and we just go crazy, man. And I run out the house, I run down the driveway, I run out into the street. I didn't have a big watch party. It was just my family, the people who started with me from the beginning, my mother, my father, my brother, I believe, and just a few others, right? But it was very intimate setting, man. And you want to talk about just again, the journey. And so immediately following next Thursday, I'm on a plane heading to Rhode Island again, because I didn't know or realize that there was such small states and that from Rhode Island to Foxborough was about a 45-minute drive. But yeah, that's where the journey started, man.
Wow, that's a crazy draft story right there. And
yeah, man, it was ridiculous.
Hey, I mean, you got to play against the Jets, so you must have been happy circling the Jets on your schedule, looking forward to playing them as revenge, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Nothing suited me better than to break the NFL world record of the longest kickoff return on them.
Yeah.
And so to do that week one of year three for me, again, you talk about moments and milestones and what's on my Mount Rushmore, specifically in that world of football, definitely that.
So we have another fan question. Someone wants to know what was it like playing underneath Coach Bill Belichick, and what are some things that you learned from him throughout your career?
So with him, man, I think it's as much as we talk about him being a strategist, I still think it's very highly underestimated of his process. And the one thing that I can say with him is that he never focuses on the obvious. It's always about implementing strategy of what you don't see. And so the best way I can compare that is you may see someone who will take a hand grenade and they'll throw it at the side of a building. You may knock out a couple floors, some windows, this and that. But if you take that same grenade and put it into the cornerstone of where that building is set up and how it's erected, it brings down that whole building. That's how Bill coaches. And so when you talk about that style of coaching in such a chaotic world and the ability to calm that down, I haven't seen many that can do that aren't from that tree, right? And so when you talk about the world that we know as, how does the Patriots keep winning time and time again, this and that, and yeah, the Spygate and all this other stuff, right? But just think about that. Think about the scrutiny of that time and how they've been scrutinized year over year, year in and year out, and yet they still find a way to win. They still continually move forward. And so there's something to say about that. And so when you're able to do that and have that type of consistency at that level of competition, in my opinion, the greatest coach that I've been around from the game of football. But then I think as far as like ever, he's definitely in those conversations.
Well, yeah. So obviously you spent 3 years with the Patriots, and you learned a lot. You played with some great teammates like Tom Brady, the best NFL quarterback in NFL history, in my opinion. And then you got to play with, the defense was loaded. You played with Richard Seymour, Willie McGinnis, Teddy Bruschi, and Roosevelt Colvin, like you said, Vince Wilfork, man, the beast in the front seven. So what was that like, just being part of a special team like that, and obviously going against Tom Brady in practices must have been fun.
Competitive as hell. Competitive as hell, man. And I think again, we shy away too much from competition, but to be amongst those ranks like you just named off, you have to gain respect from those guys first and foremost, because that team, which was created before I got there, and that success, they had what they needed. They were looking for those additional parts, of course, but they weren't just going to let anybody in. And so you have to put in the work, and then even amongst putting in the work, it's still a competitive battle. And so one of the things that one of our mantras was, find the edge, find the edge. And I used to love going in and see those guys on a day in, day out basis in the morning, where you're talking about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Junior Seau, he's 17, 18 years in, and he's still putting in the work,
Yeah.
4 or 5 in the morning. And so me as the rookie, as a younger guy, no family at the time, who am I to sit here and say that I can't put in the work? And so when you see that type of dedication, that level of dedication, day in and day out, it could do one or two things. It could break you because you just simply can't handle it, even at that level, or it could mold you into what you want to become. One of the best players in the NFL, and more importantly, a great professional athlete. Because I think what the Patriots showed for me at the time was how to be a true professional. We call it a pro's pro. And so when you talk about being into the NFL, like I said earlier, the draft, there's that sobering moment. There's that excitement of being in the draft, but then that sobering moment of like, oh crap, this happens every year. Somebody's trying to replace me. Well, the way you're able to sustain yourself in the NFL or any sort of professional rank is becoming a pro's pro, doing what other people will not do, and then finding yourself with the opportunity to add value, however you have to do that, right? And so I truly, truly was appreciative of those times in the locker room, because it allowed me to become who I am today.
Yeah, so speaking of Junior Seau, the late Junior Seau is just devastating to what happened to him, and he was a great player in his career, obviously. And what was it like just being his teammate and with the Patriots and seeing him go about his? You just mentioned him, but just say what was it like just being his teammate on the field and off the field?
Man, man, it's unfortunate because I'm in that world, right, where you want to find yourself competing, you want to find yourself um, continually finding motivation in life. And again, for someone who appeared to be so happy on the inside, was being torn up on the excuse me, on the outside, was being torn up on the inside. And so, you know, I told this man that I wore his shoes in third grade.
Wow.
Like I had his shoes in third grade, right? So to hear that from my perspective, that's homage within itself. But obviously, that's not enough, because of the results that we got from Junior. I'll never forget. I was in my office when I heard the news about him, taking his own life, unfortunately. And so, with CT and those worlds, man, I think that it's very, very important that we remain active and find our happiness and find ourselves in a different space outside of sports. It can't just be our only thing, right? And because that transition is rough. Someone like myself, as obviously we went through a lot of my accolades, and we haven't had time to go through failures, but those are there. But when you don't have that core value of yourself, a lot of guys identify themselves with sports. You have to be able to get outside of that and be able to say, no, I'm more than that. I'm Ellis Hobbs without football. I just so happened that was something that I did within a time of my life. But my core value, my core DNA is here, and I can implement that anywhere. And so, yes, it's tough, but it's no different than us learning how to catch a football, no different than learning how to dribble a basketball. And so the more that we can get in tune with that and realize that it's just a matter of starting that process over again and just finding that new passion, I think people will be put off in a better space. But the more that we try to go back and reach for that girlfriend that never wants us, right?
Yeah.
Because that girlfriend, which is the NFL or professional sports, she always wants the bigger and better. She wants the newer, right? And so the best that you're going to be able to do, even at the coaching level, even within the, I would say, the administrative level, you're going to be able to just to pierce, and you're going to be able to peer over the fence and just look at what you were. And for me, and I think you have to be real with yourself. For me, that was more debilitating than it was enhancing my career, because I wanted to be back on the field. And because of my career being taken away from me from unfortunate circumstances, I just knew I wasn't going to be able to put myself in a healthy situation.
Hmm. So we have another fan question. So obviously your former teammate Mike Grable, he's a coach right now in the Tennessee Titans. So one of our fans want to know if the right opportunity comes for you, would you consider coaching down the line?
Absolutely not. It's I actually hang my hat on being able to be successful without the NFL now. And so, yes, I do have, certain things, neurocognitive things that are going on with me, but at the same time, memory loss, things like I'm not going to sit here and stop.
Yeah.
But for anybody that again, if that's self-fulfilling to you, and that's something you want to do, by all means, please do that. Because at the end of the day, everybody has to live their life. Everybody has to do what they feel is right in their heart. For me, that wasn't the case. Now, I still coach. I coach on a smaller level, little league. I feel like I'm way more impactful to those young men than I would be to the professional ranks, simply off the fact of, as I talked about earlier, that's a business. And so, yes, there's opportunity, there's passion behind it, but at the same time, there's a lot of innocence stripped out of it. And so, for me to give a young 13-year-old some advice, or to talk to this young man about his attitude and how he needs to switch it up, or how he needs to do this and that, or how this day and age, hey, this is how you conduct a handshake, this is how you look somebody in the eye. That's way more impactful for me than ever being in the NFL, those long dog days, 12, 14 hours watching film. Yeah, man, I did all that. I got paid for it. I appreciate it. I'm out.
Yeah, so I gotta ask you about Asante Samuel. Obviously, your former teammate with you. You play with him in New England and Philly. So what was that like being his teammate with both teams? And obviously a great player in the NFL, a great second defensive back in his career too. So what was it like being his teammate throughout your whole career, pretty much?
Yeah, man, Zont was a different character. When you talk about Sante, he was already there, of course, when I got there, and like he was looked at as, I would say, an average defensive back. They were looking to revamp that back end, and he held his own. And then, you know, at the time when I got there, I gave them kind of like a youthful spark, when something that wasn't really there, because, like I said, it was more of a veteran-driven team. But then he just took off, man, and like he was very, very noted and notarized as far as like just being able to make plays on the ball, interceptions, of course. Ended up getting guapped out for it, and my hat was off to him when he got that. But we were definitely a good mixture, because where he liked to play less physical off man, I was more pressed in your face. And so sometimes he definitely made business decisions, but at the same time, it proved to serve him well. And so with him, man, he was a great individual that I tried to pull some information from, but just because we had such different styles, I didn't want to get too bogged into being something that I wasn't. But at the same time, his intellect, his ability to understand not only just the football game, but like how the Patriots ran things and did things. And then I just loved his personality, man. He beat it to his own drum. And again, we hang out off the field? No. But while we were on the field, we had a mutual respect for one another, and even going into the Philadelphia years, where he had been there again for a couple of years. Obviously, it was a different Asante because he had gotten paid. He was in his own right a top premier defensive back. So me getting over there, it was a different type of conversation. But again, just having him and I on the field at the same time, I think it gave great versatility to the defense.
And now his son is killing it in the NFL with the Chargers.
Yeah, man, that's a cool thing, man. That's something to where I don't care who you are, any professional athlete who's a father, how can you not admire that, right? And so again, to get that knowledge, and for him to take that information and pass it on to the next generation, and now see the fruition of that, that's a great thing, man. It's beautiful.
Yeah, so it must have been tough for you leaving the Patriots. And did you ever think that maybe you could have stayed with the Patriots throughout your career? But to sum up your Patriots career, what would you say the 3 years was like? And then obviously being playing in front of those fans in Foxborough.
Yeah, man, it was very appreciative. I mean, I got 4 out of it. So when I actually woke up on a Sunday morning to me getting traded on ESPN.
Wow.
And so it definitely was one of those moments where it's like, it kind of gut wrenching, because you put so much time and effort into something only for it to be taken away. And that was, again, a sobering moment of this is a business and you can't get too locked in. And it's funny how, um, fans, they scorn you or look at you crazy when you want to leave a team and when you want to get paid or things don't work out.
Hmm.
But when the team actually does that, oh, that's such a great move. We needed to open up the cap space. There's no remorse, right? And so at the time, uh, I knew that I probably wasn't going to get the contract that I wanted. I was in a 5-year deal, which was a common thing back then. But I had well surpassed or outplayed that contract. So I think me being a little disgruntled, along with the opportunity and value elsewhere, which, if you notice, some teams on the Northeast, or just in general, they're always doing certain deals, certain trades. So the Philadelphia Eagles was one of those teams that the Patriots always did deals with. So I remember when Patrick Chung went over, that he came back to the Patriots. I think my career would have probably ended in New England just because that type of transaction would have happened. Unfortunately, because of my injuries, I didn't get to make it over there, but I would have loved to have stayed in New England. Would I have got the money that I thought that I deserved? Absolutely not. But again, I would have been able to go get that elsewhere and things, but it didn't work out. And so I can't cry over spilled milk, because that dot that happened, or that moment in life, again, it connected me to why I'm here today and talking to you.
But it made it easier for you because since Asante was there too, obviously, right?
Yeah, so I mean, the transition was cool. He didn't necessarily show me the ropes or anything like that, but because there was a familiar face in the room, and I could reach out if I did need something, it made it a little bit easier. But I mean, just transitioning to a different team is just tough, man, especially when it's out of your control.
Yeah. So speaking of the Eagles, we had two of your former teammates on our show. Donovan McNabb and Trent Cole was on our show also, and it was an honor talking to them. And they're great guys and amazing
Yeah.
people. So for you going to Philly, obviously different atmosphere, and the fans are more crazier there. Especially I can never wear my Cowboy stuff there. They're gonna trash me. But what was it like playing in Philly? A different atmosphere. Obviously, you had a great team that year too when you went to Philly.
Yeah, I don't think that's a city of brotherly love. I mean,
No.
it's very, very rough, man. And like, they're they're one of the few teams, if not the only team, that I saw fans fighting themselves. Like, they're fighting each other. And I think a lot of that was from the frustration. Obviously, they hadn't won the championship in like 60 years or whatever it was back then when I was there. But you talk about just the overall atmosphere, it could turn on you very quickly. And so I sum all that up to, we're just passion, just very, very passionate about the game, passionate about it. But Trent, that's my boy, man. Me and TC, we befriended one another very, very well.
Yeah.
A lot of entertaining days and nights on the Jersey Shore before it was a popular thing on TV.
Yeah.
And so he showed me the ropes, man. We still stay in close contact with each other, man. Him and his three beautiful kids, man. His wife. He actually at the time helped me out and continually further my business career by using some of the services that I provided at the time. And so when you talk about near and dear, man, he's one of those guys where if he needed me for something, man, I would definitely help out.
Yeah. So when he was on the show, he talked about his competitive fishing now. Do you fish like him?
No. So man, we would leave a game. So like I remember it was Monday Night Football, and we typically have shorter weeks that we can have a couple more days off just because we played on a Monday. But he wanted me, after we got off the plane, he wanted me to get up in one of those I don't know, cabins in the trees or something, to go hunting deer and turkey and stuff. I said, dude, you're out of your mind. Like, and the only thing I compared that to him was, I said, imagine if we were in the weight room and I'm getting a drink of water, but I don't see somebody behind the bench press and they're shooting me in the ass, and trying to kill me. I said, that's what I looked at as hunting. And so, to each his own, man. But yeah, he definitely embraces that name, the hunter, because he's all about that life. I ain't about none of that.
Yeah. So we have another fan question for you. How do they want to know how tough is it for you throughout your career, towards the end of your career with all the injuries happening, and they want to know if the injuries did not happen, would you have been still playing right now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I could have made it to, well, I'm 39 now, so definitely would have been in a more secondary managerial role, because there's certain guys on the team that are like that, to just keep the team whole. But it was tough, man, trying to get through injuries. And honestly, I think if I had to take it back, maybe I should have made some of those business decisions as well. but just not my personality. I played through a lot of different things, breaking my neck once, getting it repaired and coming back and breaking it again, and being paralyzed a second time for a good 30 minutes or so. That takes a lot out of you. But all the injuries leading up to that, again, just very, very tough, man. And so absolutely, when you talk about the wear and tear on my body, um, you know, yes, I look a certain way, but on the inside, man, there's some dog years in there. But again, that's the life that I lived. That's the life that I chose. And so obviously I want to be uh, you know, accredited for that, whether it be, services or, health standards or whatever it is. But again, some of that I have to take ownership for and realize it's just a part of the game. And so I wouldn't take anything back, man. But I think the way that I prepared my body and how I trained, I got everything out of it. That's why I don't really leave. That's why I don't really have any regrets when it comes to the way I played the game, because I did everything within my power.
Yeah, so I got to ask you this: how ironic is it the teams you played with throughout your career, they played each other in the Super Bowl recently, where the Eagles won their first title, and I'm sure you were watching that game. And how ironic was that the two teams you played with, they played each other in the Super Bowl?
It was weird, man, because you just missed your opportunity, right? And so for me, again, not being a fan of either one of those teams prior to that, I still had people on that team that I knew from Philly and people that I knew from New England. So it wasn't necessarily that I was cheering for one or the other. It was more of like, wow, man, this is a surreal moment. And so I'm just grateful that I was a part of it at one point and one time. And for my story, there's hundreds and thousands of other NFL athletes who had just missed the boat. Right. I remember a guy by the name of Chad Scott. He sat right next to me in the New England locker room, and I remember him being so excited about us going to the AFC Championship, or I believe the Super Bowl at the time. And he said, "Young fella, I had never been. I had I think he said a 12-year, 13-year career at the time, and like he had like barely seen the playoffs. Where us, it was just that's just what it was. It was natural. It was normal, right? And so I think we take for granted how difficult it is to get to that area and get to that height of success, when you're talking about the championship series, Super Bowls, and all that. But to see that in real time and say, hey, I was a part of that, or my kids are watching it, or some of the signings that I did at the time, I still had my aha moments and my wins within it.
So we'll take one more fan question. They want to know, who do you like to watch now in the NFL, defensive back wise?
Man, I love Jalen Ramsey. I love his attitude. I
Yeah,
love his demeanor. I love how he goes about it, his aggression. Diggs, man,
let's
I don't
go.
know. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, man, because he gives up as much as he creates.
Yeah.
And so again, but look at the Dallas Cowboys. That's that volatile world, right? And so I think he has a great potential. Hopefully, he's taken a serious approach this offseason of focusing in on some of those weaknesses, because I think he's a great defensive back player and just a tremendous athlete to do what he's done. And if you understand his story, but like guys like him, I love the confidence because they can get beaten and they come right back. And so the true test will be this year, because obviously everybody's going to try to put him into a hole of lightning in a bottle. But
Mhm.
when you talk about those guys successfully over the years, your Jalen Ramsey's, he's a young man. He plays for Buffalo,
Oh,
Tredavion.
yeah. White.
Yeah, White, him. He's a great one-on-one specialist out there, man. That's very rare, and obviously I wasn't one of the best defensive backs within the area, but I was considered one of the ones that could go out there and battle, one-on-ones and do what I needed to do and take that on consistently. So I say what I say from a peer standpoint, not necessarily from a critic standpoint.
Yeah. So before we get to the last two things, obviously after your NFL career, like we mentioned earlier in the beginning of the show, you're doing big things. So what are you most looking forward to now as you continue building your business and continue being a mentor and being helping out in the community? So what are you most looking forward to in the future, building your business?
Well, you hit it right on the head. You said it. It's me. Those things that I do create the time that I want from my family. And so for me to be here, where when I had a 9 to 5 job and when I was in sales, after leaving the NFL and doing those types of things, even while trying to build a business, there was times where I would be missing a moment. of my family's life. There would be a time where I was missing or being late to the birthday party. And so those things continually gave me purpose of this is why I do what I do. And so as I build these things out, obviously in my businesses, I want to add value. I believe that if you're giving value to someone, the money is a foregone conclusion. So yes, I can day trade. That's an individual thing, but being a mentor, being able to give video lessons, YouTube, Ascend Capital YouTube channel, having those types of lessons. So this is a reality to where a lot of people just don't believe in it. But if you can see it in real time and see someone and then have that information broken down, that alone is adding value, right? But in return, by positioning myself with value, I'm able to position myself to add value back to the things desired. And so I think because my why is not the money, it provides the success that I continually strive for. And so outside of anything else, man, I won't get too far into the weeds with the businesses, but no matter what I do, my why is value. And I come into the room looking to add value to others. And if I can continually do that, everything else will be okay.
Yeah, you should write a book about your story, man. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, man. I've been entertained with some things like that, but I'm still writing the story as I go. So
Yeah.
I don't want to close the chapters off too early.
So the last two things here, our team is part of this foundation. It's called the Hugh Jackson Foundation. He's a former NFL coach. He's now coaching at Grambling State University, HBCU school. And we're trying to help him prevent human trafficking, making sure the community stays safe, the kids stay safe. And it's still horrible out there what we're seeing. So we'll send you the foundation so you can go check it out.
Yeah, man. I love to try to add value again to wherever I can, whether it's promotion. A lot of people they try to put that into a category of monetary, but I think time and just efforts are farly undervalued. And so, yeah, definitely send it over, and I can see how I can help out.
Thank you. And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and all the essential workers right now?
Yeah, man. With the ramp up that we're having, COVID is a real thing. I had a very, very scary moment within my duration with it
Oh, wow.
last year, where I had walking pneumonia, very hard for me to breathe, a lot of different things. So it's a real thing for anyone that still is out there with these conspiracy theories. But anyone. I mean, we talk about sports, and yes, this is America, and we can have fun doing those things. But if you've been able or had the opportunity to just get outside your world and see other people's perspective, I mean, there's a lot of devastation out here, right? And specifically on the home front, for someone to willingly risk their life and put themselves in front, without a gun, you're not battling an opponent. You're battling, a virus, something that you can't even see, right? And so when you're seeing that day in and day out, and willingly taking that on, and then going back to your family with the risk of giving it to them, or whatever it is, and now understanding how that can affect you physically. Yeah, man, my hat's off to you. It was in the beginning as well, because they're better individuals than I could be, and who's to say what I would do in the moment of action? But for them to not even think about it and just continually move forward. Yeah, man, very, very appreciative for all the doctors that have helped everyone, myself included.
Yeah, well said. And before we close it out, would you like to plug anything and we'll tell our fans where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media, a couple of different places. On Instagram, just my name, Ellis, ELLIS underscore Hobbs, HOBBS, the number three, excuse me, underscore the number three. And then on YouTube, my YouTube channel, as I said earlier, Ascend Capital. It's about day trading, but it's also just about just growing in general, right? So people, again, put capital into a monetary, but I always grow my wealth of knowledge, wealth of assets, resources, things like that. And then, of course, on Twitter, my regular name, Ellis Hobbs, but then also my day trader name and just my business name, Art of War. Art of War EH3 is my name.
So there you have it. That wraps up episode 1029 with former NFL cornerback, Iowa State cornerback Ellis Hobbs. Now he's an entrepreneur doing big things off the field. Man, what an amazing story! Thank you for sharing your story on this platform today, and we would love to have you back on the show at some point down the line so you can meet the full team. But keep up the great work, man. Like I said, great career, great story, and keep it up. And thank you to our fans for tuning in and asking questions also to Ellis. And But thank you again, and have a great day.
Man, appreciate it. Looking forward to it, buddy.
No problem.